there, welcome back. I'm actually going to do an extra one today, an extra video, just because there's an A to Z thing going around various YouTubers, many people I know. So I'll do one, but I wouldn't do the obvious one. Everyone's doing the variations, so I'm doing critically reviled films, best critically reviled films, or films I like are hated, or films I think are interesting to watch, or that are generally hated. So, and they get brutal reviews, and they're hated on release. Some of the older films, you may think, okay, if you look at the Wikipedia, or they say these films are good. Not on release. At least some of these films are absolutely hated on release. So I'm going by memory and what I remember, because Wikipedia only covers the set that made the top reviews rather than all the reviews. All the reviews came out in all the papers when films were released, which I remember quite well. So I'm talking about films that were hated on release within my memory, probably. So there's a few of these that you look at Wikipedia, they'll say, oh, it was a mixed response. And somebody's like, no, it wasn't mixed when they came out. They were hated for years. So I'll go that the way first. So just in case you look at a few of these and think, oh, is that really critically reviled? Yeah, it was at the time. I remember them being at the time. So, A to Z. Here we go. I'm just going silly with this one. Right. Number A is Alien 3. This is the Fincher film that was released years ago. There was a theatrical cut released, so I'm sticking to the theatrical cut, not the work print. This film was released and hated. It was... Some of the reason for it was that you could tell it had been cut to shreds and there was some problems with it. But it looked beautiful. It really was a beautiful film. It looked beautiful. It had a great mood, a sense of despair and depression. It's one of those things that the film really was really interesting. You get a feeling there's something more there. So even though it got absolutely hammered on release, it didn't do well financially, but did okay because it's an Alien film. But it was on release, it was reviled. It was like, you've killed the Alien series. And David Fincher, for about 3 years, until 7 came out, was the punching bag. Like, for any director who came up from commercials, everybody always said, after Alien 3 until 7, is this going to be a still of a substance film, just like Alien 3? So, Fincher was absolutely beaten down for 3 years after this film. It was reviled. Now it's viewed of his early flawed film, but at the time it was reviled. Right. For B, I'm going with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Again, it has a much better, longer version that makes a lot more sense. Both of these films, they should have had the longer versions released. They made more sense, the longer versions. They were understandable. Neither of them are flawless, of course. Batman v Superman is famously flawed. You know, it has a massive problem in the theatrical cut, in a sense that Superman comes across as a complete dick throughout the whole film. It makes more sense in the longer version. In the theatrical, he comes across as a total dick. Wondering why people are mad at him when it's pretty obvious. But this film had a nice mood to it. It's a nice mood. Plus, Ben Affleck as Batman always worked, even if the film's been cut to shreds around him. The thing is, it's not the best Batman film, it's not the best Superman film, by a mile for either of them, but it's still an enjoyable film. It's still an interesting mess of a film. It was critically reviled. It was the thing that killed off the Snyderverse dead straight away. Just, it killed it completely. Before this came out, everyone's really excited about the new DC universe, and after the film came out, it was like, oh. And it caused massive problems behind the scenes as they try about face with Justice League. Justice League would not be on this one. Because the Justice League released theatrical film was not good. Okay, so for C, we'll go for Cats, the famously reviled musical adaptation of the Andrew Lloyd Webber theatrical experience. I've never seen the original Cats. All I know is this film version is incredibly insane. It is nuts. Me and Dion Wynn love this film. It's got so many problems. It's so flawed, but it's definitely worth seeing because there's something weird and fascinating about it. So, see, Cat. All these films that I've covered so far, there have been videos on, so you can just look to my channel. There's quite a lot of films here that I did videos on, so if you're interested in what I think of them in more detail, you can go to my channel and find them, because there are videos on lots of these things. For D, I'm going for Dune, the David Lynch version of Dune, which I still like more than the new version. Even though it's way more flawed, it's got lots and lots of problems. I just found it more personal, more interesting. Like, I find the new version of Dune kind of cold compared to this one. This one was made by a madman who got hacked to bits by the studio and he made this strange version of Dune. But for all the flaws, there's so many great bits in it. It's because David Lynch cannot make a totally useless film. Even when he's getting totally destroyed by a studio, there's so much of Lynch stuff comes through anyway that it's always going to be there. So Dune, I adore Dune. For E, it's Exorcist 2: The Heretic, which is John Boorman's insane film, a sequel to The Exorcist that no one wanted. It decided not to make a horror film, to make a weird fantasy film that made very little narrative sense if you're looking for it to continue on the original story, but is wonderful. It's tons of ideas, tons of great visual ideas, and just the idea of where humanity's going. Like, are we going dark or are we going light? And it's just wonderful. It's a beautiful film. You know, it is famously flawed, but it's wonderful. So I don't know how you can complain about it. So I have no problems defending this film. I adore Exorcist 2. It's just wonderful. For F, I'm going for Fantastic Four, the Josh Trank version. There were earlier Fox versions that were pretty boring, pretty dull. I mean, Fantastic Four was hacked about the studios. Another one like that. And it's got a final act that has been reshot. And you can tell because of those weird wigs and it does not match the tone of the rest of the film. But the first two-thirds of the film have a much more downbeat tone. They're basically Fantastic Four kids who are basically teenagers who are scientists, who are really smart in some ways, but very emotionally intelligent in other ways. And this idea of what happens when these kids actually misbehave and have to suffer the consequences of having their bodies all messed up by this weird radiation. It's a fascinating film. I'd love to have seen the original cut of it before it was butchered, because you can sense there's something interesting there. The acting's actually very subdued. They've got decent actors, and it's like, it's an interesting take on Fantastic Four. It's probably not for people who want a traditional Fantastic Four film, but there was something interesting there. So I'm definitely going to defend this one, even though it is very flawed. It was butchered badly, but it's still something there, which is fascinating. Okay, now we're going to... I'm just moving this thing over here so I can see it better, and it's acting up like a lunatic. Right, here we go. I've got a screen with all the choices, and I'll try and move it to make it easier to avoid behind the light, but it's just a pain. Right, so for G, I'm going for Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which is the second Ghost Rider film. It's the guy that did Crank. Again, this is a very flawed film. You know, the script is terrible. I mean, the script is... It was another version of Ghost Rider written by David Goyer, which Davey wrote. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And most of the powers don't make a whole lot of sense. It's completely visually excessive. Nothing really works, but Nicolas Cage is having a whale of a time playing Ghost Rider. He's making strange faces throughout. The directors are doing some crazy shots. Idris Elba shows up as a weird monk who's helping Ghost Rider. It's one of those insane films that's either you're going to hate or you're going to find weirdly enjoyable. And I found this one weirdly enjoyable. I've seen it way too many times, so I have no defence. So there. K, H, we're going to go for Hudson Hawk. Hudson Hawk is one of my early favourite reviled movies. This is when I've realised how much I liked films that no one else liked. Because this came out and I saw it in the cinema when it came out. And there was not many people there. It was It was dead before it was even released. Everyone knew it was going to go wrong. It was like a disaster. And yeah, when you rewatch it now, there are massive problems with this film. Some of the jokes really do not work. And apparently there was a commentary that Daniel Waters, the writer, and Michael Lehman, director, did that was not put on a recent disc because it was too honest about the production. So, yeah, it's a mess, but it's a wonderful mess. There's so many enjoyable things in this film. A lot of the supporting characters are excellent. The villains are terrifically funny. Everything's fun and strange and weird, and it's like it's a film a studio wouldn't make nowadays. So it's definitely worth seeing because there is a joy of making it, even though it's apparently a horrible production and they had lots of problems. But there is a sense of people trying to do something different, even if it didn't really work. So for I'm going to go for Ishtar, which I covered recently, which is a Warren Beatty, Dustin Hoffman film, directed by Elaine May. It's very flawed. It's got a kind of slow pace to it, and it does have a very miscast Warren Beatty in it. But it does have a lot of political stuff that's pretty accurate, and it has a nice sense of humour. It's one of those films that, if it hadn't cost as much as it did, it probably worked better, because it really was about two losers who are being used by various parties in the Middle East. And the joy of it is that these two guys don't have a clue. And there's a lot of political stuff going on around them they don't have a clue about. So it's an enjoyable film that a lot of people just did not like. So, of course, I'm going to defend it. Okay, for J, I'm going for Jason X, which is the Friday the 13th in space. I'm not a massive Friday the 13th fan. I mean, some are fun, a lot of them aren't. But Jason X is a hell of a lot of fun because it's so stupid. It knows it's stupid. It knows exactly what the film is. Everybody involved in the film knows exactly what the film is. It's campy trash. They all know it. They're all having fun with it. It's easily rewatchable, and you can have a lot of fun. It's probably with a few beers watching it. It is just enjoyably stupid. Right. So for K, I'm going for The Keep. Michael Mann film. You know, I've covered it before. It's wonderfully odd. It get slaughtered critically. It's been cut down from what it should have been. It should have been a 2-hour film. It was cut down from that to about an hour and a half. So there's like half an hour missing. You can tell in the film there's bits missing. There's also problems with effects because their effects supervisor died when they were shooting, and no one else knew how he was going to do these effects. So they have those problems too. So there's lots of things going wrong with it, and it's hard to decipher some of the plotting. But it's got a wonderful mood to it, and Michael Mann goes very dreamlike with some of the atmosphere. And it's definitely worth seeing because there's some wonderful stuff in it. I mean, it's not like anything else you'll ever see. I mean, I wish Michael Mann would embrace it more because it is like his odd bomb. You know, every director has one of these, and that's his. He should just embrace it. You know. Okay, so for L, I'm going for the Lady Killers remake by the Coen Brothers. This is one of the few Coen Brothers films that were hated. It was just hated. It was like, why do you want to remake the Lady Killers? Because the plot's good. And Tom Hanks goes way over the top as the villain. One of the rare villain performances he has, and the Coen Brothers have a lot of fun with it. It is broader than normal Coen Brothers, but there is a kind of weird camp darkness to it, and it's just ridiculous and silly. And I just think it rubbed people the wrong way. I mean, I always enjoyed it because I didn't need to compare it to the original. I knew the original was brilliant. This is a remake. If it wasn't a remake of Lady Killers, it probably would have done a bit better. I think it was too broad for certain people who want more subtlety. But I'll always defend this one. This one I always find to be an enjoyable film. It's got a weird sensibility that I think is underrated. Okay, for M, I'm going for The Matrix Revolutions. Now, you could have gone for any of the Matrix sequels, really, because they all get hammered. But I like them. I especially like Reloaded and Resurrections, but Matrix Revolutions is the one that gets hammered most, so I'm going to cover that one because it has got some real problems. I mean, there's a middle act where most of the lead characters aren't in it, and there's a massive fight in a city. It's a really good fight visually, and if you've seen the big screen, it looks really impressive. But there are narrative problems, and it does go really obscure into the machine world, and the logic maybe doesn't make sense to some people, like of what's going on, because you have to be really paying attention to a lot of things that have been built up in the first two films. So it's a strange film. I really like it though. I mean, it's one of those films I really like, but I like strange films. I like sci-fi movies that aren't easiest to decipher, and this was definitely that. Well, at the same time having some massive action scenes for the mass audience. So it's weird. It's got the big money things, but it does it in a really strange way, which doesn't satisfy a lot of the audience members. But I really enjoy Matrix Revolution, so I'm going to always defend it. Okay, for N, I'm going for 1941, the Steven Spielberg film from the late 70s. He spent a fortune because he just had massive hits with Jaws and Close Encounters, so it's like, I want to make this comedy. And Spielberg's not a comedy director. He's one of those directors, he's gotten better at it. But this one, he just went broad and made everyone overact, and it's a crazy feel to it. I mean, it's not the funniest film ever, but there's a sense of just madness to it that's actually funnier than any of the jokes. Just a sense of constant one-upping of crazy to a sense of just wildness to the film, and there's some great set pieces like the Jitterbug contest and some of the model planes and things like that, and just some of the crazy characters. Some of it doesn't work, but there's a sense of craziness to it that really works. It was an early film written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who did the Back to the Future series. So this is one of their early films, but they're still learning. And it might have worked better if Zemeckis directed it, to be honest. But there's a crazy mania to it that you need Spielberg for, that he really delivered on. So I've always really loved this film. So for O, I'm going for Obsession, which was a Brian De Palma film that he made. It was written by Paul Schrader. It has some problems. I mean, the lead actor, Cliff Robertson, was apparently a problem for the producers and the director because he was hard to deal with. And as De Palma's admitted, it was one of Bernard Herrmann's final scores, and they cut out the final third of the film, which had a different ending, and it was simplified, and Schrader and De Palma fell out over it, apparently. And the reason that he got trashed is, one, the lead performance just didn't quite work as well, but also is a obvious remake of Vertigo, or a bounce off Vertigo, and people didn't like that. I was like, this is the film that got De Palma really hammered by the Hitchcock fans. Like, you're remaking Hitchcock, and it's like, he knew you knew, but this one is a bit too much entwined into Vertigo, and it is not quite as individualistic as some other De Palma films. But there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. I mean, it is enjoyable. There is some interesting visuals to it. There's a mood to it that's wonderful. John Lithgow turns up as the villain, one of his early performances, so there's lots of good stuff in it. It's just got some flaws. Okay, now P was staying with Hitchcock for the Psycho remake, which was reviled. It's still reviled. It's still like the film that nobody likes to talk about. I adore it. There's a video on it wild. I adore it. I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's a wonderful piss taking people's purity of original old films, and also the idea of what happens when you remake a film that close. Like, the change in actual culture, how much does it affect the change in acting style, and the change in motivation of a different director doing it? How does it change it? Because normally when that happens, they change a lot of the plot. And this one, they don't change the plot, they stick to the plot, but everything else changes around it, so you can't actually remake a film. So it's a wonderful art house project. It's really strange, and it's funny to defend because some people really hate it, which makes it all the better to defend. Okay, for Q, I'm going for The Quick and the Dead, which is a Sam Raimi film that, on release, it was a bomb. It failed horribly. Critically, a few of the main critics liked it, but mostly the critics said this is a self-indulgent spaghetti western riff, and it's boring, and why would anyone like it? And it's been a cult film because certain people enjoy it, and a lot of other people will never enjoy it because you have to have seen spaghetti westerns to get some of the jokes, and it is very cartoonish, and it's got a wonderful sense of humour and silliness. And Sharon Stone is the lead, and she's playing the Clint Eastwood part, which just messes everything about. And it causes certain purists to spaghetti westerns to lose their shit. I adore this film. I've seen it plenty of times. It's definitely one to see. It's beautiful. Sam Raimi going mental with spaghetti westerns. It's great. Key R, I'm going for RoboCop 2, which was absolutely loathed on release because it wasn't RoboCop. Because RoboCop was such a good film by Verhoeven. It was so strong. The narrative was insanely wonderful. It built stuff on it kept on building towards its conclusion. It knew what it was about. Everything was working. And RoboCop 2 is a bit of a mess. But it's a mess with lots of good ideas. It's just, it doesn't have a central narrative. This film starts, stops throughout. It starts with RoboCop trying to work out where he works, where he lives in the present, like where he is emotionally. Then that gets scrapped and thrown away, and RoboCop gets reprogrammed and becomes a weird character. Then that gets thrown away, and this other plot that's been bumped away below the surface about taking over the city by the corporations, and this other RoboCop being built, and that becomes the dominant thing. So each time it's almost like an anthology of there's always a RoboCop plot floating through it, bits and pieces that nothing connects up. So narratively, it's a bit frustrating, and it is needlessly violent. It's violent. It feels far more violent than the first one, and far more just cold. There's no person in the centre of this one that really gets your emotions, but it is really interesting. Despite its mess, it's still an interesting film. So I'll still defend it, even though I know it's got massive plot holes. So S, I'm going for Showgirls, which, even though I've got problems with, and it is a disastrous film by Paul Verhoeven, it is wonderfully subversive and tacky and weird, and it does take the mickey out of the American dream in really interesting ways, even though the central script doesn't quite come together for what you need the tone of the film to be. Like, I think the writer was writing one film and Paul Verhoeven was doing another film, and he needed a different writer to get where he wanted to be. But it's still interesting mess, so I always can defend it. Again, there's a video on it if you're interested. T, we're going for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, another sequel to a beloved film that no one liked because no one got the tone, because it's a black comedy rather than a horror movie. It's intentionally ridiculous. It takes all the cliches in the first one and makes them really ridiculous. It's one of those films with a tone that either you get or you don't, and that's why I adore it, because it's got this weird satire about consumption in the 80s and relating that to just basic cannibalism and murdering people just for the most basic of 80s excess. So it's a wonderful satire, and it's crazily insane, so it's definitely worth seeing. It's it and the first one are the two Chainsaw Massacre films you should see. The others don't really matter. Okay, for you, I'm going for The Uncanny, which is a cat-based anthology film from Milton Sprutsky, who used to do the Amicus films. This one was away from Amicus after Amicus folded. He did this thing about cats. It's weird. He's got all this. So it's an anthology film with like various stories based around cats, and it came out and people were like, "What the hell is this? This is stupid." I mean, the Amicus films are always critically, not well respected because they were obviously trashy films. I love them. This one was like the step too far. This is the one where even Amicus fans were like, "No, this is garbage." But I still like it. It is very flawed. It does have some slow points, but it is definitely worth seeing, because all these films are worth seeing because they are enjoyably ridiculous. So for V, I'm going for Van Helsing, which is only counts when you're drunk. When you're sober, this film is hard to sit through, but when you're drunk, it's a lot of fun. Because it's non-stop action. There's no character beats. There's no nothing. It's like a child playing with toys. And if you're sober, it's annoying. But if you're drunk, you're very forgiving of it. So Van Helsing when you're drunk is the V. For W, I go for the Wicker Man remake because it's insane. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty boring at times, but the insane stuff really is enjoyable. I mean, it's Nicolas Cage going to an island, trying to find a missing girl, and obviously he's getting set up. I've seen the original Wicker Man. But all the people on this island are women, and they believe in this sort of god of the bees, and it's a strange film. It's a weird film. So it's a matriarchy, and it's just odd. It's really odd, but it's very enjoyable, enjoyably strange, and it's hard to describe. It's a film. If you watch it, you may hate it because there's some Neil LaPute who directed it is not good at horror. He doesn't understand horror. But all the weirdness he gets from the horror genre is interesting. It's just that he can't do a horror scene. He can't understand fear. Or that kind of fear, the kind of horror movie fear. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, so it's a bit of a disaster, but also fascinating. You know. So for X, I'm going for X the Unknown, which I've just covered in an earlier video of my Creator Mass video. I've covered it in more detail. X the Unknown is insane. It started off with Joseph Losey as director. He was fired or replaced or something pretty quick. And the plot's insane. The plot's just ridiculous. It's just... But it's wonderfully insane. There's some really bad acting in it. There's also some wonderful atmosphere from the Losey stuff that was shot. So it's a weird thing where the director took over wasn't as good as Losey, obviously, and it's a very schizo film. But it's very enjoyable. I really had a lot of fun with this one. So, definitely worth seeing. For Y, I'm going for Yakuza Apocalypse, the Miki film. You can't describe it. The villain is insane because it's basically a guy in a big, basically children's TV suit who's all powerful, and there's Yakuza and there's vampire stuff, and there's... Oh, it's so strange. It's so Miki. You have to see it to believe it. Just go watch it. Some people like Miki do not like this film. I adored it. It was just, as soon as I started watching it, that's definitely one for me. Okay, and for Z, I'm going for Zabriskie Point, the Antonioni film that was his flop to blow up. He went to America, got a big studio behind him, and made a film they didn't understand. All of it's 60s alienation. So instead of saying, oh, this is wonderful, people are finding a new world within America, he was like much more cynical about the whole thing. And everyone hated it. You know. It's a great ending, and it's just the whole thing of it is just wonderfully weird. So Zabriskie Point is the critically reviled end point for me. You know, this is the end of this list. So I hope you enjoyed the list. It was fun to do. A few of the letters were difficult to find films for to start with, but I got there. So I really enjoyed this. This is a little extra. The videos next week might be a bit late, or might not exist at all, because I might have something to do early next week. So we'll see how that goes. Right, bye for now.